Hey guys, welcome back to Ken Michaels Radio, where we talk all the time about the Beatles. Today we have a very special guest. You may, if you listen to any of my other podcast shows, you may have heard me talk about a show that is one of the most impressive shows I've ever seen in concert.
Wow.
And it's a show called the Concert for Bangla-Desh Revisited. And it's done by a band from Long Island called Wondrous Stories. And I thought that I would invite the founding member of the group to my channel here to tell you all about it because it is about to happen this coming Friday, which is the 24th of February at the Space in Westbury, Long Island. And I can't be any more sincere in telling you this is one of the best shows I've ever seen
Wow.
as a Beatle fan, and just I'm a lover of all kinds of music. But the first time that I saw this show, I was so blown away. I've seen it twice. I'm looking forward to seeing it this Friday. But we welcome Kenny Forgione from Wondrous Stories to the channel.
Hey there. Is this the famous Beatles historian, Ken Michaels?
Infamous, I think.
Infamous, yeah. Well, you
Yeah.
know more about Beatles than pretty much everybody. I would say 99% of the people in the
Mhm.
world.
Well, I'm very fortunate that I grew up at a time when the Beatles were around. I followed them as a little kid then, and all the solo music since. And so I've had a chance to absorb it my whole life.
Me
And
too.
it's a part of our DNA, my DNA, yours. And I could see the passion that you have with Beatle music, and especially with this particular show. But before we talk about the Concert for Bangladesh Revisited, tell me a bit about you, your musical background, the artists that you grew up listening to, and what were your favorites, and what led you to create this band Wondrous Stories, which I'm sure, I hope people know, the name comes from the classic Yes song, Wondrous Stories. And this band does a lot of progressive rock, which you would figure with a name like that. But tell me about yourself first, and then we'll talk about the band, Wondrous Stories.
Well, if you really want to know about me, I'm one of seven brothers. And I don't even know if you knew that, but uh, I was, I'm in my mid 60s now. But when I was a little kid, I heard, um, my mother didn't have money for lessons of music of any kind because, unfortunately, and this is not to bring anybody down, but my father died at a young age by a tragic accident. So seven of us boys with my mom, and she had no money, but I had the radio on, and and my favorite group when I was a little kid, I was hearing the Four Seasons. I was
Okay.
hearing their great band, and that early music of the Four Seasons really, really hit me. So they were really my first favorite band. My favorite band of all time has probably got to be the Beatles. Um, not surprisingly, but there are other
Probably.
bands. Yeah.
Probably. That doesn't
Well,
cut it with me. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
no, no, no. Um, well, they were definitely the biggest influence on me when I was a kid, for
Yeah.
sure. But I did like the Four Seasons before I liked the Beatles, and then the Beatles came along, and I was like, kaboom! In fact, the first Beatle album I ever got, I was walking. I went to Catholic grammar school. I was walking to Catholic grammar school, and this was in 1966, and there was a Beatles album sitting on the street without a cover on it. I picked it up, I brought it home, and I said, Mom, I found this on the street. And she said, Oh, you probably got that because some people think that John Lennon said something bad about God,
Uh-huh.
and they threw it out. And that is really what happened. So I got Meet the Beatles on the street. I didn't have the album. I went home and we had a record player. So I put that on. I had heard the Beatles before that, but I want to hold your hand and She Loves You flipped everybody out. Even though I was a little kid, it flipped me out too.
Yeah.
But my first Beatle album was Meet the Beatles. It's still my favorite early Beatles album to this day. So I became a huge fan. And it's funny because then my older brothers started buying albums, and somehow we got Magical Mystery Tour before we got Sergeant Pepper. They were put out only 5 months apart,
Right.
but um, Magical Mystery Tour I thought was the best thing ever. I would never like anything better. And then one day, Sergeant Pepper's was on. My brothers had bought the album, and that one just flipped me out. I mean, some people who didn't grow up with it don't realize the impact that album. I didn't realize at that time all the tricky things they were doing in the studio, but I knew I was hearing something special,
Mm.
and it flipped me out, and it really flipped me out. And I went berserk over that album, and I always thought Magical Mystery Tour was great. Even though a lot of people don't think it's great, I really do think it's great. I mean, first of all, it has all those kind of strange songs on the first side, and then on side two is the greatest hits. I mean, it was a freaking fantastic album, you
Right.
know. So
You and I are kind of close in age there. And
yeah,
even though I grew up with those Beatle albums, I didn't realize all the invention, all the creativity, all the groundbreaking stuff they were doing. I just accepted every album one at a time and got to hear it all gradually. And it was a natural progression to me. It wasn't this startling, all of a sudden, wow, Sergeant Pepper is so different. But years later, you look back, you study it, and wow, then you learn.
well, the
But it just,
progression the
yeah,
progression with me was I was young when I was young when I Want to Hold Your Hand comes out, but I was also young when I got the Beatle album. I picked it up off the street, and I was young when Magical Mystery Tour and Sergeant Pepper came out. But
right,
that was when I really realized who the Beatles were with that. So I really missed A Hard Day's Night, Help, Revolver, Rubber Soul. I missed all those albums at the beginning.
yeah,
I had to go back,
right,
and I think one of the first albums that I got was the White Album, and that was when I was, and I flipped that over that album, but not as much as Sergeant Pepper probably, but so I realized the albums as they were coming out, starting from Magical Mystery Tour and Sergeant Pepper. I didn't really know the earlier albums, which later on I found out were freaking equally as great, pretty
yeah,
much, you know.
yeah. There's a difference in just being a fan and enjoying the music and then studying it later. But as a little kid, my ears couldn't tell how inventive the Beatles were. It was just, this is great music, and I accepted all of it. Yeah, there were weird songs in there too. I Am the Walrus is very weird to me as a little kid. A Day in the Life scared the hell out of me with the orchestral buildup at the end, that kind of stuff. But that's why sometimes when I talk about Revolver, it was such a big leap to go from Rubber Soul to Revolver, the British albums, but we also got I'm Only Sleeping and Dr. Robert and And Your Bird Can Sing on Yesterday and
Yeah,
Today to make it
sure.
a smoother transition into the American Revolver. So it wasn't as drastic, a change, but I just felt like it was all a natural progression. But hey, every single album is so strong.
You
So
mentioned that you got scared, it scared the hell out of you with A Day in the Life.
yeah,
Well, it's funny because I was playing Magical Mystery Tour, side two, and my brother Gerard, who's my youngest brother, was listening, and he started crying at the end of Strawberry Fields Forever. It scared him. He did not like it. He likes it now, but he didn't like it. He started crying. I mean, that weird, thing at the end of Magical Mystery Tour scared him.
right. Yeah. Huh.
Yeah.
It's strange the effect that these songs can have, and you don't fully understand why. But I know that with a Day in the Life, there was talk about a car crash in there, and I felt like someone was going to be killed in a car crash at the very end of the song. And as a little kid, that's the thoughts that got processed in my brain
Right.
there, and it scared me. So yeah. But
Well,
anyway,
I
yeah,
did notice a change though. Like at a young age, my ear was focused on AM radio, and I was listening to all those songs, and I liked all those. I liked a lot of the music that was on the radio. But when Sergeant Pepper came along, that really was different. And I didn't know the trickery they were using in the studio, but I knew that it was different.
Hmm.
And it was like, and that's when I became. I always loved the Beatles, from the beginning. But that's when I became like a fanatic. Even at a young age, I became a fanatic with
Hmm.
those albums because I never heard anything like that, and everybody followed then with psychedelic music after that. But the Beatles really did start a different trend.
Yeah. So
Uh,
growing up, were you a big fan of all the different genres of music on Top 40 radio, or were you like a more British Invasion fan or
I probably leaned more to the British Invasion, but I was a fan of everything. I
hmm.
had. I always had and still have an open mind and an open ear to different styles of music. And I loved Tom Jones when I heard him on the
Sure.
radio. The Fifth Dimension, all these,
Absolutely.
you know, great stuff.
Yeah, that I talk about once in a while on this channel, Top 40 Radio, because that's what I was brought up on. And it exposed you to so many different genres of music, and it was all acceptable, you know.
Yep.
In the 60s and in the 70s on Top 40 Radio, you could hear pop, you could hear I always like to bring up the early 70s because you could hear on WABC in New York Led Zeppelin, Whole Lot of Love, and One Bad Apple from the Osmonds, and Superfly from Curtis Mayfield. And
WABC didn't play too much of that though.
not
They
too much, but you would
No.
hear it, and it did become a top 10 hit, Whole Lot of Love.
Did it really?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't remember that. I remember it more on FM radio for sure. I started listening to FM radio, more than AM. Although I still listen to AM too.
Yeah.
I don't remember hearing that on AM, but I'm not doubting you.
Yeah. Well, 60s were so much the same. You look at a top 40 chart any particular week, and you can have the Beatles and Louis Armstrong, Hello Dolly, in the same week. And you
I'm
could have,
glad you brought this up because um, I'm debuting a new band at our concert for Bangladesh, and it specifically focuses on the years 1964 to 1973 and the transition from AM to FM radio.
uh-huh.
So it really, I'm debuting a brand new band. And, I don't know if now's the time for me to mention that, but
Well,
I
we'll
will.
we'll save that for when we talk about the concert for Bangladesh
Okay.
visited. But talk about Wondrous Stories, how you put the band together, and what was your intention? Because whenever I've watched any of your streams, the music can be all over the place. Like we were just talking about Top 40 Radio. I heard you guys played Tony Orlando and Dawn. you know, I'm watching this,
Very
and
rarely, very
okay,
rarely. Though.
I was lucky
But
that moment.
yes, well, I can tell you that there was one comment. You see, our band Wondrous Stories, first of all, it started out as a duo, me and Kevin McCann, who was in the first band I was ever in. I didn't even know how to play guitar. It was in the late 70s, and it was called Skydog, which is the nickname for Dwayne Allman. So we played a lot of Allman Brothers, and but we did play some other stuff. We played I Am the Walrus. Um, there was a string synthesizer in the band, and we were able to play that freaky, the freaky string chords for I Am the Walrus. Um, but So after that band dissolved, me and Kevin played duos forever. We played in Bayside, and then Kevin in 1988 uh, went off to play a Phil Ramone production of Phil Ramone, by the way, is Billy Joel's producer. He
Yeah.
did a multi-million-dollar production of the show Elvis, and Kevin was Scotty Moore in the guitar player for Elvis in the show. It
Hmm.
was great. I mean, he got to meet Bruce Springsteen and all these people. It played at the Beacon Theater for a month, and it was in the Las Vegas Hilton where Elvis had played, and for almost 2 years or so. No, actually, it was there for almost a year, and then it traveled all over the country and Canada and all
Uh-huh.
sorts of things like that. So when he came back, from that tour, which was 2 years he was gone, I had to get different players, which luckily I got some really nice players to play duos with me. I was playing 5 nights a week as a duo. You know, one day Kevin was back and we were playing with another keyboard player. It was a trio that night, but there was somebody who brought somebody into the audience who was watching us and said, hey, sometimes we've heard you play some Peter Gabriel or some Genesis or something as a duo or a trio. We got this guy right here that knows all that stuff. And his name is Chris Clark. So Chris Clark sat in with us. And I was like, oh my God, the guy was amazing. I don't know if you know Chris Clark or know of him, but Chris Clark is now going to be the keyboard player for John Anderson's new band, which starts touring in April. No, this guy's amazing. He was in the band Brand X, which was Phil Collins' alternate band to Genesis.
Okay.
He was just in that. He was on all these different Broadway shows. So all of a sudden, he started playing with us, and we knew I've Seen All Good People by Yes. We knew it acoustically, and he added all these keyboard parts, and he added another vocal part. I was like, oh my God, this guy is amazing. So Wondrous Stories, unbeknownst to me, was getting ready to be started. We were a trio all of a sudden. In fact, me and Kevin used to play in the Hamptons sometimes, and we called ourselves Casper and Spooky because we were the whitest guys out there. Everybody else had it. We were the only guys without a tan. All these girls in bikinis running around with tans, and these guys, muscle guys with tans and everything. And me and Kevin, these two really white guys playing this music that we grew up with, that we loved. But anyway, so we were a duo called Casper and Spooky. And I said to Chris, I said, pick a name, a cartoon name. And all of a sudden we were Casper, Spooky, and Bugs for Bugs Bunny.
Right.
And we started playing music. So we were asked to play in Bayside at this place called Blossoms. Blossoms is on Bell Boulevard. We played all the other places on Bell Boulevard and Bayside. It was a very hot spot for live music, for especially duos and trios and stuff like that. Not really full bands too much, although there was one or two places that did have full bands. But anyway, we started playing on Thursday nights. Now, there was another band that was playing there on Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. They were called the Conglomerates, and they had Mike Bellucci on drums, which Mike Bellucci is the drummer for Strawberry Fields. So he had his drums there, and he's like there Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday, and we're there on Thursday. And he goes, guys, would you mind if I didn't have to move my drums? And we said, no, you don't have to move your drums. There's enough room for us here. And so he goes, and would you mind if I sat in with you? So all of a sudden he's sitting in, we're playing Beatle music. We're playing music by The Who. And we started learning songs by Yes and Genesis. So I said, well, if you want to play with us, it would be really cool if you learned a few Yes songs. And so he started learning Yes songs. So Mike Bellucci from Strawberry Fields was the first drummer for Wondrous Stories, because after a while we started, in fact, it's a weird story. Couple of years ago, I said to Mike Bellucci, I said, I think I filmed us onto VHS tape with one of those old video cameras in 1994, and I can't find the tapes. I said, I think I gave them to you. This is more than 20 years later.
Right.
And he goes, let me look. And then he calls me back. He goes, I found them. I'll give them to you. So he gives them to me. And on the tape, it says, thanks for coming. It was like January 27th, 1994. Thanks for coming out on this cold and snowy night. I didn't think anybody'd be here, but there's a nice crowd here. And by the way, this is the first night we're calling ourselves Wondrous Stories. So I actually have 2 weeks in a row that are recorded. I found, after all these years, I found the very first videos of the first and second Wondrous Stories gig ever. We were a 4-piece band. It was Chris Clark, Kevin McCann, myself, and Mike Bellucci. Mike Bellucci stayed with us for about 6 months, and he got another job. Can't remember exactly what. And he said, and not to mention Ricky Martinez, who is our current drummer,
Hmm.
started filling in when he couldn't make the gigs on Thursday. So he goes, I think I'm going to have to bow out after about 6 months. So Mike Bellucci was the drummer for Wondrous Stories for about 6 months, and he did a fantastic job. He
Hmm.
really did. Ricky Martinez, however, was already knowledgeable about prog rock music. He came in knowing the songs cold and songs that we never thought we would play. And all of a sudden, the four of us started playing these pretty cool cuts by Genesis and Yes.
Hmm.
And it was like, wow, now Wondrous Stories really has a different meaning. I mean, this is like really a prog rock band, although we love the Who and the Beatles. So
Uh-huh.
we did a bunch of the Who and the Beatles and Yes and Genesis, and then we started adding Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and that's how the band started. We wound up staying a four-piece band, and we had a good reputation for 3 years in the place, and was Blossoms in Bayside. And Tommy Williams was brought to us by a substitute drummer, Adam Snyder. He was brought, even though I had met him once or twice in the 80s, we really didn't know each other. But Tommy Williams, I remember seeing him in our audience going, he was rubbing his chin. And and I didn't realize how great Tommy Williams was. But all of a sudden, our sound man, George Marshall, I don't know if you know George Marshall, great,
Yeah.
fantastic sound man, who has recently passed away, unfortunately. Rest in peace, George. He was the sound man for Twisted Sister and a bunch of other people.
Okay.
Um, but he was our sound man for 5 years. And somebody said, let Tommy Williams sit in. And he sat in. And I was like, this guy is great. So he started coming every week. He wanted to sit in with us all the time. And the George, the sound man, said, not for nothing, but Tommy said, he would love to be in this band. And it took me about a half of a second. I said, wow, what an addition to this band this guy would be.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, I asked Tommy, you want to be in the band? And he was like, yes. So all of a sudden, now we're a 5-piece band. And we were able to, the options were almost limitless now because everybody can switch off on basses and guitars. And man, it just opened the door for a lot more songs and a lot more music.
Yeah. Now, full disclosure here.
Yeah,
Um, Tommy Williams is someone that I've known for a long time because people who watch this channel are going to get so sick of my talking about this record store that I used to work at on
yep.
Long Island. Most of my life, I've lived on Long Island. It's only since 2001 I moved to Connecticut. But I worked at Record World in Roosevelt Field, and it was the busiest record store on Long Island.
I've been
And
to it.
Tommy, yep, I was there for 3 years, loved working there. Half my paycheck went to buying records. This was all before CDs. This was vinyl time. Um, and Tommy worked there, as did Ed Ryan, who is one of my best friends ever. He was a guest on my channel. He and I started doing my radio show on the Beatles on college radio. He joined me. I actually started it, and then I asked him to be a part of it. But Ed was working in the store. Tommy was working in the store. Tommy went on to work with Debbie Gibson.
3 Beatle freaks, by the way.
Yes. And like I said here on this channel, and I said this to you on the phone the other day, Ed, Ed, Ed and I became really great friends. He lived 3 blocks away from me all this time, and I never even knew it. And so I used to drive him to the radio station every single week, and we did a show together. So yeah, I have just the greatest memories of working at that record store. But what a thrill it is to watch Wondrous Stories in concert. And Ed, by the way, has been a part of the Concert for
A
Bangladesh
big part.
Revisited.
A big
Yeah,
part.
which we'll talk about. And as has John Montagna, who is a good friend of mine. He's been on this channel. He's been on the podcast shows that I'm a part of. So a lot of the very same people. Oh, you had the Weaklings on as
Yes.
guests. So, I'm friends with them. And so many of the people that I know are part of this show. But I'll tell you something. I moved to Connecticut in 2001. I sure wish that I knew about Wondrous Stories when you started out, because I might never have moved. Because this is my kind of band. Because God, the caliber of musicianship you were talking about, Tommy, we knew in when we worked at Record World, he was always talking about playing the guitar and all technical stuff that was a little bit above my head. And he was so knowledgeable about music. So to see this band now, and it's so many years later, and you're so polished, it's just so incredible. But when you did form the quartet with Tommy from the onset, was it going to
No,
be
the
mainly
quintet
the
by then.
quintet? Okay,
Yeah,
who am I
yeah,
missing?
five.
Okay, so did you think this is mainly a progressive rock band with a little bit of
um,
Beatles and a little bit of Who, or
well,
is
there
it a
was
combination of all of it?
at times there was a lot of Beatles, and at times there was a lot of Who. In fact, we started. I I don't want to sound dumb, but I am friends with Rich Pagano of the Fab Four,
Okay.
and I met him at Madison Square Garden. And I swear to you, this is the truth. Now, you can take from it what you will. He said, "How's the band doing?" I said, "Great. You guys are fantastic at playing the Beatles." And this was about 1999, early on for
Hmm.
the Fab Four. And I said, we're going to play the whole Sergeant Pepper album with the sitar and from beginning to end in order. We're going to play that. It was the first, that and Tommy by The Who were the first full albums Wondrous Stories ever did. So he said to me,
Uh,
"Wow, you're going to do the whole album from beginning to end?" I mean, since then, it's a normality for a lot of things. In fact, there are classic album outfits that go out and play classic. But
sure.
I swear, as as far as I know, at least locally, we're the first ones to do that locally.
Hmm.
And Rich Pagano said, "You're doing the whole Sergeant Pepper album from beginning to end?" And I swear to God, 2 weeks later, I see Fab Four playing the entire Abbey Road album. And I went, "Oh my God, okay." You know, it probably gave him the idea. And I really do believe that. He might not remember it this way, but I swear that happened. Because after 2 weeks or 3 weeks later, I saw that, and I'm not taking credit for it. Those guys are
Right.
freaking unbelievable.
Yeah.
They don't need my help, but they started doing full albums right from then. And so yes, we played other stuff besides the prog stuff, but I'm going to say that the prog stuff was at least half of our show, if not more,
Okay.
at that time with Yes, Genesis, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, that Jethro Tull, that
Hmm.
type of prog stuff, real classic prog.
Before we talk about the Concert for Bangladesh Revisited, I know that certainly the time that I worked at Record World, that was the time of Genesis. That was the time of Phil Collins,
Oh yeah.
Genesis,
Oh yeah.
but I also remember so well fans discovering through they would buy the new Genesis and then they would investigate the early Peter
Mm.
Gabriel years,
Yep.
and you could only get them on import in those
Really?
days. Yeah,
Really?
Gem Records. Um, they were the distributor for a lot of the early Genesis stuff, and albums like Nursery Crime and Foxtrot. Those albums you could only get as
Foxtrot,
imports
my
for.
favorite.
Yeah, I like
That's my
that.
favorite.
I love
Uh,
Selling England by the Pound. That's one of my favorites.
well,
When
I,
I
I if it wasn't for my brother Peter working at a record distributor, which I don't think he can get in any trouble for it now, but it was 1972, and I don't condone this behavior, by the way. And my brother Peter is not normally a thief, but he came home with 2 boxes of albums, 25 nursery crime albums and 25 foxtrot albums.
uh-huh.
And I don't think I would have been known about Genesis because they weren't played too much. The album covers freaked me out. So I and they used to open up. They were the gatefold ones,
Right.
and they were the original ones. Which later on, when they put them out, they didn't have that anymore. But the original ones had the lyrics there, and sometimes Peter Gabriel sang so strangely and with a British accent, you couldn't really understand all the things he was saying. So I
Right.
was able to read the lyrics, and I became a Genesis freak. So I, in 1972, became a Genesis freak really early on,
Hmm.
you know. So and then after that, I bought every album as they came out. So I didn't have to buy imports. They came out and I bought them. I
Right.
bought them immediately.
Did you find that you had more of a hardcore following, or because of, the popularity of Genesis from the 80s on up, and even Yes had some success in the 80s too. Did that
Yeah.
help to carry the popularity into the 90s and when you were starting with Wondrous Stories?
The hardcore fans that like Yes and Genesis were following us, and it might, I don't want to say a cult following, but they were deeply into the prog stuff, and they liked the early stuff. They
Hmm.
like Peter Gabriel, Genesis more, most of them.
Okay.
Some of them do like the Phil Collins stuff more. There's no doubt about that. It was a little more commercial, a little easier to the average ear, I guess. But so we had a big following from doing the early Yes and Genesis. We did do some of the later stuff too. Some of the we never did We Can't Dance, or
Uh-huh.
uh, Chris uh, Chris Clark was kind of mad at Genesis that he would say, "We can't write," and he would say, "With No Son of Mine," he was like, "No Song of Mine." I like that song, no
Hmm.
Son of Mine, but he would kind of be fooling around at the same time saying that, but it was funny that he would say that. But he was definitely into the early stuff more for sure,
Hmm.
and, as most of us were, you know.
Okay. Yeah, I like a lot of the early Genesis stuff. And I love Wind and Wuthering as an album too.
Hey, this is
You
going
know,
to be a
did,
long interview.
yeah, okay. We should move into Concert for Bangladesh Revisited. But this particular show, as I said earlier, you recreate the entire Concert for Bangladesh. And I'm not just talking about the George Harrison songs. You have the Bob Dylan set, you got the Leon Russell
Yep.
medley in there, you got Ringo, you got Billy Preston, and I'm trying to remember if it was the first show that I saw of this or the second. It's really impossible to recreate Ravi Shankar's piece. So
Yes.
you had John Rajavi from the Weaklings, also
He'll be there.
Liverpool. Oh,
He'll be
okay,
there this time.
yeah, but he did. Was it the Inner Light or was it Love You Too?
He did Love You Too, but we did have another player one time, and we did the Inner Light also.
Okay,
We've also done um, Within You, Without You. And so instead of it, what you're trying to say is,
yeah,
instead of us trying to be Indian, which we're not, and
right,
I'm not putting that down at all, that Ravi Shankar and his band were fantastic.
right,
But people, and probably even the band, is more interested probably in the Beatle music that was done with those same instruments. So
right.
that's what we're going to do this time. Instead of doing the 25-minute Ravi Shankar set of Indian music, we're playing two Beatles songs that included sitars.
Right. It's just so cool just to know that John Rajavi in particular took the time to learn the sitar. So
He's
yeah,
talented. He's very, very talented. He's great. And he is a great human being and one of the nicest guys and just a team player. I try to throw more stuff. I say, John, I want to highlight you more. He goes, no, I'm fine, man. Don't worry about it. And he's like, whatever you want me to do, I'll do. So he's
he is
just,
he is like the George Harrison of the group. Because when you see Liverpool, he does the George stuff,
oh,
the,
sure,
the band Liverpool. So he's very much
sure.
a George guy. So yeah. So tell me how you came up with this idea to do the concert for Bangladesh.
Okay. Well, first of all, I wasn't at the original show, but I was a Beatle freak, and anything that came out Beatles, I was interested in. John, Paul, George, Ringo.
Hmm.
The whole gamut. Probably the least of it being Ringo, even though I do like his stuff more now, probably than I did then. But
Okay.
anyway, so I always loved George. I loved George, and I saw the movie when it came out. We all took a train ride into Manhattan and went to the theater. I think it was the Ziegfeld. I think it was where the movie debuted in New York. And I went twice. I went with different group of friends each time. We all just went in and we saw the movie. So I loved it. I just thought it was so cool just seeing a Beatle doing his thing and then letting other people do their thing. So the we were, by the time I got the concept of doing the Concert for Bangladesh, we were doing entire albums already. We had done Close to the Edge from Yes, Tommy from The Who, Sergeant Pepper from the Beatles, um, uh, Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. So this guy, who was a friend of mine, who started to come to see us in Queens, was a prog rock fan, didn't really know the Genesis stuff, but knows it now and loves it because of us. His name was Alfonso Mondello. And the guy, and if you're a big soccer fan, you know the name because he's the technical director of Major League Soccer in the United States. Wow. And he's the guy that hands out penalties for guys who play dirty and all this stuff. He's important in that league. And he was a player, and he was a coach of the Metro Stars and a coach of the Florida team. So, but now he's the technical director of Major League Soccer. And he kept saying to me, why don't you guys play the Concert for Bangladesh? And I was like, that's too hard. There's a whole choir, there's a horn section, there's all these different all this different music, and there's sitars. And I said, it's just too hard. He bugged me for about 2 or 3 years. And then finally I went to Tommy. I said, Tommy, how about doing the Concert for Bangladesh? So I did initiate the thing with the band. And he was like, oh, he goes, I love that. He goes, that's a good idea. So, but it was really Alfonso Mondello's idea. And he kept bugging me for years. And finally I said, let's see if we could do this. So, and then we started getting a choir together and a horn section, including Arno Hecht, the famous sax player who plays with Dion, and Jay Giles, and he was the horn player on Hot, Hot, Hot with Buster Poindexter, played with the Rolling Stones on the Steel Wheels tour, and, wow. Fantastic player. And he's going to be in it this time too. So that's how the idea came.
How much time does it take to put it all together in rehearsals?
Well, we rehearsed the main part of the show for this is going to be the ninth time, number nine, the ninth time we've done this show. And through the years, we got quite a few vocal rehearsals together, and horn section. And Tommy Williams is tireless in writing out horn charts and whatever else, because we do it a little bit different every year. Well, we add extra special guest songs onto it, and he's constantly maybe thinking about rearranging some of the horns, even on some of the old stuff. He's on top of it. He's a fantastic musical director, and he's tireless in that. So I give him all the credit in the world for that. I could never do that. He can,
Yeah.
So we are not, because of COVID and everything else. I mean, we're basically getting 2 rehearsals in for this show, and they're going to be tomorrow, Monday, and Tuesday. And Tuesday is an open rehearsal at the Warehouse in Amityville.
Okay.
People can walk in and see us rehearse. You can't. I'm going to make an announcement. You can't request songs, and you can't, and don't even clap, because we're going to be stopping and starting songs. It's really just an open rehearsal. So,
tell me, what are the most difficult or complicated songs or pieces to do outside of whatever the Indian piece is?
Yeah, the Indian section is probably the most intricate.
Yeah.
But once you learn songs, they're kind of in there, Right. But a lot of the special guest stuff has, like, whoever special guests we have, Tommy is tireless in figuring out vocal harmonies, and we have, a pretty big choir, like, 9 people or something. I can't even
Mm,
remember. But I mean, it's nice and full and rich, you
right.
know. Plus, the main band is singing along too. So maybe 10, 11 people singing at the same time. It's beautiful. When Denny Lane, who was a guest of ours 3 different times on that show, came in for the first time, we found out the day before or something that he might show up. So we learned, and Tommy taught everybody parts to sing the back to Go Now from the
Hmm.
Moody Blues. He was the original
Right.
singer on Go Now.
Sure.
And Denny Lane came out the first time and did one song with us. And that's it. And it freaked. We weren't even sure if he was going to show, but he showed. And the audience was like going bananas. That was 2017. And he heard the choir singing in the background. I remember, and it's on videotape. And he just turned to the choir and smiled. He smiled right at my wife, who's in the choir, Sue Turner. And he was just like, wow. I mean, you know, of course he played with McCartney's band, and that was fantastic. And he did
Sure.
that. He did that with Wings, but he never had a vocal backing like that. I'm pretty sure he never has,
Hmm.
and it's really pretty cool.
All right. When it comes to uh, the other artists and their parts, how do you figure out who's going to do the Bob Dylan songs? You know, is there any kind of competition in the group? You know, no, I want
Uh,
to do that Dylan song, or
well, that we have that worked out. Tommy Williams is a Bob Dylan freak.
uh-huh.
You know, he's a Bob Dylan freak. He wrote Bob Dylan a letter when he was, you know, 5 years old or something, and said, "What is that thing around your head that you're holding the harmonica?" And freakishly enough, and he still has the handwritten note. 6 months later, he received a note from Bob Dylan and one of those harmonica holders. He received that from Bob Dylan, so he just that
Oh,
was one of the
sweet.
things. Yeah, it's really great. So Tommy is, I forgot how many songs there are. Maybe
Well,
five.
there's five.
Yeah, five.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Tommy sings 2 or 3 of them. Tom Sanfilippo sings one, and Ed Ryan sings one.
Okay.
So that's already done
Oh yeah.
for that.
I'm remembering what Ed sang. So I shouldn't give away anything. However, I
Yeah.
will say
Okay.
that Ed does do the Leon Russell.
He not only does it, he tears the house down. Ed Ryan is first of all, he's a big guy, and his personality is bigger than life. So
Mhm.
when you add a big monstrous guy, you know, and his big personality and his stage presence, it's the audience just, you know, he's, you know, I gave, you know, Tommy Williams is the musical director, but basically I gave all the people who I thought should sing the songs, and I think I did right. That is a showstopper, and I said Ed Ryan has to sing that one, and Tommy Williams was like, okay, all right, you know, he didn't doubt it, but like I was like, he's got to sing that, and so he does that, and he kills it, and he, you know, he's a stand-up comedian,
Yep.
so he does something a little bit different every time he does it. It's not exactly the same, so even the band is surprised. He doesn't tell anybody his antics beforehand, so he comes in and he just does stuff, and the crowd laughs, and he is great. He's just great. Ed Ryan's great.
He's so natural at doing this, and it's there's so much improvisation that comes out of him
Oh
when
yeah.
he's doing the medley, and it's like, how do
Oh,
you do
somebody,
this? It's
if somebody makes an error in the song or something, which I think one time maybe he even made an error, he's quick with a quip just to make it funny. You
uh-huh.
know, it's
He,
it's it's great.
he's really something. Have you ever thought about, the afternoon show? They did Hear Me, Lord, the concert for Bangladesh. You could throw a bone to the audience and do that.
You know, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. Now I'm mad at myself for that. I'm ashamed of myself. I should know that.
yeah.
I know
Apparently,
that they did. It takes a train, uh,
yeah. It takes a
to
lot to laugh. It takes
a train to cry.
right. Yes.
Yeah, something is a
Yeah.
complicated name, but and we do that in the show, and
Yeah.
we do that one, the Bob Dylan song.
Right.
So Um, we do extra George Harrison songs that I'm not giving away. We
Right.
do songs that were not in the show.
Hmm.
So I'm not going to give that away.
We should also point out, yeah, both times that I saw this show, it lasted about 3.5 hours. This is one long show. You certainly get your money's worth here. But in addition to doing the concert for
But nobody
Bangladesh,
leaves. Nobody leaves.
yeah,
Hardly anybody leaves
yeah,
early. Yeah.
that's true. Yeah, it's a long night. Prepare to to stay up late when you
Well,
see this
this
show.
one's probably going to be three and no longer.
Really?
Three. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's
Yeah.
still quite a lot of music. But when I saw the show, the two times I saw it, you did a full Beatles album like you did Magical Mystery Tour.
Oh, that was our John Lennon tribute. And that one we had Gene Cornish of the Rascals as a guest, and we had Denny Lane as a guest doing a whole
Okay.
wing set.
Hey,
Oh,
I'm confusing it.
uh, do you still see me? Because I'm getting another call on this thing and it turns you sideways. Do you
No, I
still
see
see
you
me?
fine. You're fine.
Okay, as long
Yeah.
as you see me, because this is freaking me out that somebody's. Oh, Tommy Williams is calling me. I'll have to call him back.
Tell him I
So,
said hi.
okay,
Tell him I want him on this channel.
okay, you got it.
But anyway, the two shows that I saw, I know that there was a whole other set that you did. It didn't
Oh
just
yeah.
stop with the concert for Bangladesh. So, and you can elaborate more on the special guests that you've had in the past.
Okay, well, we've had Denny Lane and Steve Holly from Wings did some fantastic Wings songs. It was fantastic. We've had Randy Jackson from Zebra and did
Nice.
Who's Behind the Door,
Okay.
which is maybe my favorite Zebra song. It's really, really a cool song. We've had Joey Molland of Badfinger, who I
Yep.
picked him up at the airport and he slept in my house. Yeah, the only living member left of Badfinger. And we
Right.
did a 4 or 5 song Badfinger set. And that might have been my favorite year, just sentimentally to me. They're all my favorite years, but that was 2011 at the Highline Ballroom in Manhattan. And on that show, we had the Soul Survivors, the lead singers of the Soul Survivors. If
Hmm.
you remember the hit Expressway to Your Heart,
Sure.
my uncle was the drummer in that band. But my uncle, tragically, but almost Hollywood ending, passed away on stage while he was drumming in 2003 on stage in Manhattan. He had a heart attack on the stage.
How
I've
terrible.
heard of a lot of people dying on stage. There's been quite a few of them.
Hmm.
But they were there and they did a tribute. And in the middle of Expressway to Your Heart, we did a whole little medley with them as a tribute to my uncle. They brought out Carmine Appice, who was the or Carmine Appice, however you want to say it, the drummer for the Vanilla Fudge, and Rod Stewart, and he knew my uncle, and they paid tribute in between the song. We were just vamping, and they paid tribute to my uncle. So sentimentally, that was my favorite year because of that, probably. But
Right.
I really loved that that happened, and that his old bandmates and Carmine were on that show. We also had Tommy Burns from Billy Joel's band, the guitar player for Billy Joel, on that
Hmm.
show. Steve Holly, that was the. Oh, I don't know if Steve Holly was there. I think he was. I think that might be the first show he played with us,
Okay.
or maybe that was 2013. I can't remember, but it was just some lineup. I mean, oh my God! I mean, it was great. Doing Badfinger, Vanilla Fudge, Soul Survivors, including a tribute to my uncle. That was just that one. I have all the shows on videotape myself. For my own viewing, and I'm sure some of the band members have these shows too because I've probably given it to them. But some, in fact, okay, at the beginning of our show on Friday the 24th, we play. It's called Ghosts of Bangladesh Past, of our shows, and we show little snippets of the guests that we've had.
Ah,
So we're going to show a little video of that. It takes about 7 minutes for that video of like snippets from a lot of the guests we've had. I know I'm missing people. Um,
Gene Cornish.
Gene Cornish of the Young Rascals. What a set of Young Rascals music. That was another one that I loved, an American band in the 60s that me and my brothers just went crazy over, all those great songs,
Right.
Grooving and How Can I Be Sure, People Gotta Be Free. I mean, they were a great band. They were a great American rock band for sure.
Yeah. I did see them when they reunited.
I
You
saw that too.
know, yeah, they
Yeah.
were phenomenal. And I just saw Felix with Gene. They just did a tour
Yes.
right
Yeah.
before Dino died. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Gene is a survivor. He had a heart attack on stage. Speaking of heart
Yeah.
attacks on stage, and so he is. I'm glad to see him still doing gigs. That's
Yeah.
all I can say. I'm glad to see him out there. It's great because they brought him back to life on stage. So it's great that he's still around, and Felix is asking him to do the Rascals songs with him. It's great.
Hmm. Okay. Now, I know part of the proceeds of this show actually
Yes.
goes to cancer research, right? This
St.
goes,
Jude's
hey,
Children's Hospital.
okay.
Since the beginning, there's always been a certain amount of money set aside. So the band members, I always believe musicians should get paid. I've done so many benefits for free in my life. It's ridiculous.
Hmm.
So everybody gets paid so that they don't lose money on the gig. Not most of the musicians, even if they're popular musicians, are not really, rich unless you're Elton John or Paul McCartney or,
Hmm.
so I make sure that everybody gets taken care of and fed, and a little bit, and then the rest of the money goes to cancer research. And that is why I get things in the mail every couple of weeks saying, can you give us more? I'm like, I can't afford to keep giving, but when we do this show, we send off. So I'll be happy to send off money to them, and it's for a great cause. It's for St. Jude's Children's Hospital.
Hey, they have the most stellar reputation out there, St. Jude.
Yeah.
So,
And can you imagine if you had a child that needs that help? I mean, forget it, you know.
hmm,
So I'm proud of that. In fact, we sent a letter the first time we invited Danny Harrison and George Harrison's wife,
Olivia.
Olivia. We sent them a message saying, please, if you'd like to show up, please come over. And she politely declined, but said, I'm glad that you're giving money to a good cause. So
I,
that was
I,
nice to even hear back from them.
I was just about to ask you if the two of them, Olivia and Danny, were aware of what you're doing. Do they know that
Absolutely.
you're continuously doing this? Are they
You
aware of
don't
that?
think, there's so many videos that are going up, every year, people with their phones and everything. You don't think they're aware of it? I'm sure they're aware. They knew we were doing it then. And, since then, there's so many videos. Somebody's come to them and said, hey, somebody's doing the concert for Bangladesh, the music. And then I'm sure they've seen some of it. They had to have. I mean, unless they're totally oblivious and not interested. But if
Hmm,
they do hear it and they see Denny Lane was on the show and all these different people who they know,
right.
they know these people too. They probably said, okay, that's nice. I'm hoping they're not offended because I know that's very sacred to them. The concert for Bangladesh is very sacred to the Harrison family. In fact, they wrote something like that in the letter back to us, that this is a very special thing to the Harrison family. You
Hmm.
know, so
It does my heart good to see, people like you doing something like this. And I just read in my news column in one of my podcast shows that over in Russia, they're doing a recreation of the one-to-one concerts from John and
right.
Yoko. I'm not sure if it's all the other acts, but I mean, to take the time to acknowledge something that important, that much a part of history, whether it's George or John. But yeah, before we go, you were telling me before we started this show that there's a another act that you wanted to uh, present
Yes.
before the concert for Bangladesh show, was it?
No, it's going to be like there's going to be a 10-minute intermission. We're either
Okay.
going to go on right before the intermission. What we usually do is play a big chunk of the concert for Bangladesh, and then we take a small intermission because the place wants us to take an intermission. If we don't do that,
Hmm.
people don't go and buy drinks and buy stuff there. So they definitely want us to do that. So I haven't decided. We haven't decided whether we're going on right at the end of the first set or the beginning of the second set. But in about 40 minutes, I'm speaking to someone else who's going to be a special guest, and I want to mention that. And I'm almost positive he's going to be it, but he might not be. But we have Arno Hecht on our gig, and he still plays with Dion to this day, and Dion still tours.
Hmm.
He's an older guy, but I got to tell you, I saw him a few months ago at NYCB, the old Westbury Music Fair, and he
Right.
sounds amazing. And Arno is like his right hand man, sax man, and so um, Stevie Van Zandt is produced a show um, doing the life of Dion. Now it's been off Broadway, and the star of that show was also a star of Wicked on Broadway. And I'll be speaking to him very soon. So I have a feeling people might hear two Dion songs during the concert for Bangladesh this year, along with Arno, who knows the stuff called. And
Hmm.
we're going to have a big backing with a big band with horns, and this guy is a fantastic singer. His name is Mike Warteller. I hope we get him. I mean, I'm not 100% sure. If we don't, what can I say? The show is going to be amazing anyway. The other band that I was talking about, speaking about, I was glad that you were talking about AM and FM radio kind of colliding and having songs that were done on both stations. We have a brand new band, and it's my band, and we're debuting 5 songs during that show. It's called The Incredible AM FM Time Machine. We have special effects going on us on the screens behind us. It's the years from 1964 to 1973, a 10-year span that covers from 1964, and we do something from every year from 1964 to 1973, and the transition of how there are some songs that were done on both dials, AM and FM, when it gets to those years, like
Yeah.
especially like 1969 and 1970 and 71. And then, of course, there were some songs that AM radio would not play at all. And we're going to do 1 or 2 of those in the later years. And we're going to, we have us flying in a spaceship and going to these different years. And whatever year we land in we're going to play something from that year. And the band, is it bragging saying we sound really good? We
Uh-huh.
sound really good. In fact, Ed Ryan is in the band. A girl singer, Janet Montalvo, fantastic singer. I mean, a lot of people on Long Island know her already, but
Yeah.
when they hear, some of the people will not know her and will remember her from this show. So we're doing fantastic vocal stuff from all the big vocal bands from that whole era, and it's the 7 people in the band, and all 7 of us sing. So the harmonies and the fatness of it is tremendous.
Wow. I am looking forward to that. So this is like a springboard for future
This is
dates.
our first gig, and it's only 5 songs, but this is going to be mainly for theaters, and I see it as a no, I can't miss, show for that type of audience. And they may be older. I'm sure
Uh-huh.
then although I'm hoping younger people show up for it, but it's good enough where I really believe that it should be cool. We might be doing. I'm in touch with some of the big parks for the summer, and it's hopefully we'll be in some of the big parks on Long Island. Plus, we'll be flying all over doing the show. And Steve Holly was supposed to be the main guy, but because he got a world tour, Steve Holly of Wings,
Hmm.
he is now a sub in the band. And John Rajavi is the sub guitar player in the band also. So, but the players we have, I'm not even going to mention them all. I'll mention them all at the concert. But it's a good band, and so I'm really excited about that.
Well, you sold me. You need a roadie? You need someone to carry the equipment?
Yeah. Do you have a big burly son?
Anything but burly. Anything. Um, this has been great. No, I'm definitely going to check out that band, and I'm going to be looking forward to finding out more about it. You have to tell me about gigs. I hope that you go into New England a bit. I mean, this gives me more of a reason to visit people I know on Long Island. But
Well, this new band may be in Connecticut and wherever, wherever there's a good theater that'll have this type of music, we're going to be there, for the new band. And for this show coming up, well, I'm glad this interview turned from a half an hour to an hour. But but in fact, I got to talk to the Broadway star who
okay,
he's the star. He's one of the stars of Wicked and the new Dion show, which may go to Broadway. Stevie Van Zandt is involved, and it's big.
I'm sure
It's
it's
big.
going to be great. Stevie did the Rascals,
He did.
show,
Yes, he
so
did.
which we have to be so grateful for that they
He
reunited for that.
he
So
does. He does. Stevie Van Zandt does shows and brings back revivals of things that is close to his heart, and a
right.
lot of things he likes, I happen to like too. So I
Hmm.
mean, so that's it. That's my
Okay.
story, and I'm sticking to
All right. Kenny Forgione, thank you so much for spending time with us. I look forward to seeing you this Friday night.
You got
And
it.
for anyone who's never seen this before, you got to see this show. And then I hope you're going to keep doing this every year still. It's
We may, maybe we'll do it. Maybe we'll make it a nice even 10 times doing it. But
okay.
I'm thinking about retiring it and possibly doing the Concert for George, which has different songs on it,
Oh,
which is
yeah.
always a great tribute to George Harrison. And of course, I'd still donate some money to a charity. Um, and by the way, there's not many seats left for this show. I
Okay.
think there's something like 65 seats left.
Okay.
And a lot of them are scattered singles, but there are still some seats together, but not many. So if you want them, you got to get them now. You
Okay.
really, because the walk up crowd and everything, boom, it's going to be sold out. They may sell a few standing room seats. I'm not sure. I'm not sure
Okay.
about that 100%.
I will put the link up in the description box if you want to purchase any remaining tickets that are there. And can't wait till this Friday, Kenny.
I love it. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thanks so much for doing this. Thanks to all
Bye.
of you for watching.
Bye,
Wondrous
everybody.
Stories, Wondrous Stories, the Concert for Bangladesh Revisited.
You got
Okay.
it.
Okay. See
Take
you
care.
all soon.